Good evening. Just hours before a woman goes before the Senate Judiciary Committee and accuses the Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh of sexual assault, and with a third accuser coming forward just today, President Trump went before reporters. And we're going to bring you that in just a moment because the president certainly made news on a number of fronts. First, another late development. There's word of a fourth and fifth accuser after a third accuser, as I said, came forward earlier today. We know this from transcripts of questioning of Judge Kavanaugh by Republican staffers on the committee that were just released. One question involving a letter from a woman in Colorado to Republican Senator Cory Gardner about what she says her daughter witnessed. Here's the relevant passage from her letter, and the question is read to Judge Kavanaugh about a night when a group of friends were allegedly at a bar in Washington. That's followed by his answer. Quote, "I will remain anonymous, but I feel obligated to inform you of this 1998 incident involving Brett Kavanaugh." The letter went on to read, "They were all shocked when Brett Kavanaugh shoved her friend up against the wall very aggressively and sexually. There were at least 4 witnesses, including my daughter. Her friend, still traumatized, called my daughter yesterday, September 21st, 2018, wondering what to do about it. They decided to remain anonymous." Judge Kavanaugh is then asked, did the events described in the letter occur? He responded, no, and we're dealing with an anonymous letter about an anonymous person and an anonymous friend. It's ridiculous. Total Twilight Zone. And no, I've never done anything like that. Now, again, this is from one of 2 sessions with Judge Kavanaugh by phone. Democratic staffers were not on the first call. They were on the second, but asked no questions. Judge Kavanaugh was also asked about another alleged incident, this one in Rhode Island in 1985. According to the same transcript, he was asked about Deborah Ramirez, accuser number 2, and he told Senate investigators that he had a, quote, friendly relationship with Ramirez, but that they were, quote, not friends. He denied her allegations, as he does all of them. The White House has just responded to this. I want to check in with CNN's Jim Acosta outside Trump Towers here in Manhattan. So, Jim, what is the White House now saying?
Oh, Anderson, they are issuing a response at this point to this latest allegation that apparently involves or allegedly involves a woman from Colorado. And I could just read it to you. It says this allegation came in the form of, and some of the structure of this comment is really almost lifted out of that transcript you just read, Anderson. It says this allegation came in the form of an anonymous letter to a senator about an anonymous person, an anonymous friend. Under oath, Judge Kavanaugh denied the allegation of acting violently toward a woman and had no recollection of socializing with a woman from Boulder, Colorado. So, Anderson, yet another denial of another allegation of sexual misconduct aimed at Judge Kavanaugh. But, Anderson, at this hour, as you know, as we're getting very close to this high-stakes hearing tomorrow up on Capitol Hill, the allegations are piling up, Anderson.
Right, and we should point out this allegation that we've just been talking about, the alleged one that allegedly happened in Colorado, was actually much later in the judge's life when he was working with the Starr investigation.
That's right, and to the allegations that you were just talking about, what we know from looking at that transcript that's been released is that Judge Kavanaugh is denying all allegations of any abuse at this point. The only thing that he's really saying at this point is in this prepared remarks that he's going to be delivering tomorrow, which we've gotten a sneak preview of, which says that he's going to acknowledge that he did engage in some behavior that he says makes him cringe thinking back on his days in high school. But up until this point, Anderson, he is not acknowledging or fessing up to any allegations of misconduct at this point.
It is interesting. I mean, is that the same thing that he said during his interview with Fox News? Because, I mean, the bit that sticks out to me was sort of his recollection of his time in high school as being all about focusing on studies and sports, no indication of anything that made him cringe.
That's right, and I think that is the item that stands out the most in those prepared remarks that he's expected to deliver tomorrow, is that he talks about behavior that he looks back on and says makes him cringe. I think that's obviously something that is going to be focused on by these senators tomorrow, at least on the Democratic side, when they have a chance to question Judge Kavanaugh. The question is, well, what parts of your high school days are you talking about when you say there are aspects of your past that make you cringe? It is a step forward, I think, no doubt about it, versus what he said in that Fox News interview, where he didn't use words like that, obviously, Anderson. And so I think that is obviously going to be a very key part of tomorrow's hearing.
Now, the press conference that the president gave this evening, his answers at times were full of contradictions, both calling this a con job and at the same time saying that he was leaving an open mind.
Right. That's right. And this was typical President Trump, trying to have it sort of all ways. And making statements, and then on the back end of those statements, trying to cover himself for perhaps later purposes. And one thing he did say in response to a question from me, Anderson, is that he is keeping somewhat of an open mind about this hearing tomorrow and what Christine Blasey Ford has to say with respect to her allegations aimed at Judge Kavanaugh. But Anderson, I think no question about it, when you look at what the president said earlier today, this was just another example of essentially Mr. Trump siding with the accused and not the accuser. And I pressed him on that, and here's what happened. Why is it, Mr. President, that you always seem to side with the accused and not the accuser? You have three women here who are all making allegations, who are all asking that their stories be heard. And, if you look at the case of Roy Moore, if you look at the case of one of your staffers, you seem to time and again side with the accused and not the accuser. Is that because of the many allegations that you've had made against you over the years?
Well, first of all, I wasn't happy with Roy Moore. Let's get that straight. But Roy Moore was a Republican candidate, and I would have rather had a Republican candidate win. I was very happy with Luther Strange, who was a terrific man from Alabama, but Luther Strange had a lot of things going against him. As far as women, whether it's a man or a woman, these are, it can happen the other way. Allegations can go the other way also. You understand that. And whether it was a man or a woman, 30 years ago, 36 years ago, in fact, they don't even know how many years ago because nobody knows what the time is.
Now, the president did say he may change his mind on all of this after he listens to the testimony from Christine Blasey Ford. But Anderson, at the same time, I think it's very obvious that the president is very much interested in watching this hearing tomorrow. He even said during the press conference to all of us that he's going to be watching, and even postponed a meeting, or talked about postponing a meeting that he has coming up with the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein over that whole saga. That may be happening on Friday, it sounds like, because the president wants to watch all of this tomorrow like the rest of us. Anderson.
All right. Jim Acosta, thanks very much. Obviously a busy day tomorrow. This day was already remarkable even before the president started talking. I want to start the conversation tonight with former presidential candidate and Vermont Independent Senator Bernie Sanders. I spoke to him just before air. Senator Sanders, in this press conference, the president in one moment called the allegations against Judge Kavanaugh a big fat con job. In the next, said he was open-minded going to tomorrow's hearing. Which do you think it actually is?
I do not judge what President Trump says, because I think he's a kind of unstable guy who lies a whole lot of the time, and whatever he says today may well change tomorrow. So I don't put a whole lot of faith or credibility in what he says.
I suppose that applies to when he also said that he left the door open to the possibility that he could withdraw the nomination after watching tomorrow.
Look, Anderson, this is where I think we're at. And full disclosure, I announced publicly in Vermont that I would be voting against Kavanaugh very shortly after Trump nominated him, because I think he would, if seated, become part of a hard right majority voting against the environment, voting against women's rights and Roe versus Wade, voting against campaign finance reform. So I've been pretty clear. I am not supportive of Judge Kavanaugh. But obviously what's happened recently raises real questions. And I think where we are now is we have three women, at least three, maybe more to come, who have put their lives almost on the line, because when you go forward in this political climate, you're going to be smeared, you're going to be attacked, you're going to be hated by a whole lot of people. But they did it because they thought it was important to tell their story and their allegations about Judge Kavanaugh. And it seems very clear to me that the choice we have right now for Trump and for Kavanaugh is one of two things. Either Trump withdraws the nomination of Kavanaugh, or else there is a thorough FBI investigation to sort out these allegations. And if I were Kavanaugh, who denies all of this stuff, I would very much like that investigation so that if I were seated on the Supreme Court, the American people would know these allegations were not true. But I think that it, to me, would be unconscionable for Chuck Grassley to go forward with a vote on Friday before we had a thorough FBI investigation.
Just lastly, the president was asked multiple times today, what message does this send to women around the country? He never really answered. Let me ask you that question. What message do you think all of this sends to women around the country?
Look, I think this is a profound issue. It is no secret, there's no debate, that millions of women have been sexually harassed, humiliated, in some cases raped, attempted rape. And it is also no secret that historically in this country, when that has happened to women, what the culture said is, don't go forward. Your family doesn't want you to talk about this. It will be embarrassing. Nobody believes you. That is a culture that has to change. And I don't want young boys or girls in this country who are watching this process to say, wow, this guy may have done all of these things. Nobody investigated it. He's now on the highest court of the United States of America. That's wrong. We want, first of all, to change the culture in this country so that this type of sexual attitude of boys on girls does not happen. But we certainly want young women, if they have been assaulted, if they have been harassed, to come forward with confidence that they will be listened to, that they will be taken seriously. And that is not what we're seeing right here in this process.
Senator Bernie Sanders, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Let's continue the discussion. CNN Chief Legal Analyst Jeffrey Toobin joins us, also CNN Political Analyst David Gergen and Kirsten Powers. Jeff, what do you make of this knowledge that Judge Kavanaugh has been questioned about now 5 accusations? Again, nothing's been proven. He's denied it all. I'm wondering what your reaction is.
I would really discount the 2 anonymous allegations. I just think it is really unfair to Judge Kavanaugh to expect him to respond to a the Rhode Island and Colorado cases. I mean, they are so vague. They are not, there is no accusers. I think they are in a completely different category from the 3 named, identified, and identifiable women who have all volunteered to testify under oath about what Judge Kavanaugh did. That is extremely serious. The other 2, I just don't think, in fairness to him, he should even have to respond to.
Kirsten, do you agree with that? Because, I mean, obviously, as I said, I want to reiterate, Kavanaugh has denied both of these newly made accusations, or revealed accusations, I should say, just as he has all the others. Do you think Democrats are going to question him about anything other than Professor Ford's allegation tomorrow? Or do you think Chairman Grassley will shut down questions about any other claims?
Well, I think that the anonymous claims are very different than the other claims that we have, because the reason that a lot of times people give a lot of credence to women coming forward by name is because of what happens to women who come forward by name. And it's a really perilous process for women. And so for a woman to do that would suggest that she's not making it up, because women know what's going to happen to them, even if they're telling the truth, let alone if they're making it up. And in this case, asking for an FBI investigation versus you could make up something that's anonymous. And I think if these things really happened, the people need to go on the record.
You agree that it's not fair to ask Judge Kavanaugh about anonymous allegations?
Yeah, I do, because I think once you say these allegations, no one can ever, you can't put that genie back in the bottle. And so there will be a certain number of people that will always say, well, you were accused of this. And I think Jeffrey's right. I don't think it's fair.
David, I mean, is there any way to view tomorrow's hearing as comprehensive or conclusive? I mean, given the fact that it's only Professor Ford and Judge Kavanaugh who are going to be speaking. Ms. Ramirez is not, nor is this third person who has written out a sworn statement. I mean, do you envision key GOP swing votes of Collins, Murkowski, Flake, voting to confirm without hearing more about at least those other 2?
Well, it would certainly be disappointing if they voted to confirm without hearing the other 2. The president himself said today, I want to hear the women, plural, and we only have one woman coming forward. And I do agree that we ought to set aside the 2 anonymous. That's absolutely, we shouldn't worry about those. But there ought to be, Bernie Sanders is right on this one. Hey, all 3 women deserve to have a background investigation. Now that we have 3, and there may be a pattern, we need to dig deeper. And I must say, out of this hearing, out of this press conference today, a remarkable press conference, the one thing that was really missing from Donald Trump, I mean, he essentially did try to have it both ways. He wants to tell his base, look, if we win, I did it. I intervened at the last minute. If we lose, it was all those Democrats who are doing this great con job. What was missing throughout an hour and 15 minutes was any sign of empathy, any sign of sympathy and understanding and compassion, and in fact, to salute the 3 women who have come forward for their bravery. And so far, as I can tell right now, so far there have been 15 or 16 women who have alleged that Donald Trump engaged in sexual misconduct. He's now got 3 women who've come forward on his top nominee. He's gone to bat for Roger Ailes in a number of cases of charges of sexual misconduct. Best I can tell, at least 25 women who have charged misconduct. He has agreed to he's 0 of those women. He has said only 0. All of them were essentially liars. The 25 are all liars, and none of the men, all of the men are innocent. That signal to the country, I think is powerful, and I just don't know how Senators Murkowski and Collins will want to be remembered in history. Do they really want to go down as the women who stood up with this president, 15 to 16 allegations, and stood up for Brett Kavanaugh, 3, uninvestigated.
Roy Moore, by the way, as well, and Rob
Roy
Porter
Moore,
as well.
Does they really want to go down in history that way? It's hard. I admire both of those women. It's hard for me to believe that they would.
Jeff, I mean, Democrats who want the FBI to get involved, there certainly doesn't seem to be any chance of that happening. Right?
None at all. None at all. And it's so incredible when you read, particularly the latest allegation that Michael Avenatti's client brought forward. I mean, it is richly detailed with a number of specifics acknowledged. The FBI exists to do investigations of what happened in controversial circumstances. That is an allegation that cries out for a genuine investigation. How can you seriously investigate Ms. Ford's claim that that this assault took place when you don't even interview the person she says was in the room, Mark Judge? I mean, this is not an investigation. This is an exercise to try to get Brett Kavanaugh confirmed. And if you look at the staff of this investigation, it's the Judiciary Committee's Republican staffers. Their job is not to do an investigation. Their job is to get Brett Kavanaugh confirmed. The idea that the Republicans are interested at all in what happened here is preposterous.
Kirsten, I mean, who has the biggest burden tomorrow, the bigger burden tomorrow in terms of how convincing they are? Judge Kavanaugh or Professor Ford, or are they equal?
I guess it depends on, who's listening. I mean, ultimately, you have 2 senators this is coming down to, who are going to decide, Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, about who they find the most credible. And I don't know how really anybody can draw a conclusion after this without the FBI investigation, without questioning Mark Judge, because otherwise you're just listening to 2 different people and deciding who you think is the most credible. The only thing that I would say that I think leans more in the favor of Dr. Blasey Ford is the fact that she brought this up in 2012 and in 2013 with friends, with her husband and then a friend who has done a sworn affidavit. And then she also talked about it in early 2016 and 2017. All of these people have done sworn affidavits saying she brought this up. So she'd have to be somewhat psychic. And the Democrats, of course, in this con job would have had to know all the way back in 2012 and 2013, all sorts of things were going to happen that there's no way they could have known happened. So so the theory that's being put forward by the president and the GOP really falls apart very quickly.
Yeah.